My mother's laugh cut through the room as Eliza walked in wearing her handmade dress. "You're dating a girl who makes clothes from scraps?" 5 years later, as my family begged for invites to Eliza's exclusive fashion show, I remembered that Christmas dinner and smiled. Karma is patient. I was born with a silver spoon in my mouth, literally. My mother has a framed photo of me as a baby, clutching an antique Tiffany silver spoon that's been in our family for generations. The Harrington name carries weight in certain circles, and growing up, I never questioned the enormous privilege that came with it. Our sprawling estate in the Hamptons, the summer home in Tuscany, the private jet trips to Paris for Fashion Week. This was my normal. My father, a hedge fund titan, and mother, a former socialite turned charity chairwoman, raised me and my sister Vanessa with crystal-clear expectations. Maintain the family image, associate with the right people, and never ever embarrass the family name. I met Eliza on a rainy Tuesday in September, during my final year at Columbia. She was huddled under the awning of a coffee shop, clutching a portfolio that was falling apart at the seams. The sky had opened up without warning, and I offered to share my umbrella. When she looked up, time seemed to stop. Her eyes, deep brown with flecks of gold, held such intensity that I nearly forgot how to speak. She wasn't conventionally beautiful by my family's narrow standards, but there was something magnetic about her. She wore a patchwork jacket that looked like it had been assembled from vintage scarves, with hand-embroidered details that caught the light. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. "I'm already soaked," she laughed, gesturing to her dripping portfolio. "But I can't let these designs get ruined. My professor will kill me." Her voice had a slight rasp to it, like she'd been up all night working, which, as I later learned, she had been. The coffee shop was crowded, but I managed to find us a small table in the corner. As she carefully laid out her sketches to dry, I was transfixed. Her designs were bold, unconventional, fabrics repurposed and reimagined in ways I'd never seen before. A jacket made from old army tents, transformed into something that could walk a Milan runway. A dress constructed from vintage kimono silks, spliced with modern technical fabrics. She talked about her process with such passion that her hands moved like she was conducting an orchestra, her coffee going cold and forgotten. "My dad worked at a textile factory before it closed down," she explained, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "He used to bring home scraps that were headed for the landfill. I started making clothes for my dolls when I was 6. Her voice cracked slightly. "Now he drives a cab 80 hours a week so I can afford part of my tuition." The contrast with my own upbringing couldn't have been starker. While I'd been attending cotillions in custom-tailored suits, Eliza had been teaching herself to sew on a second-hand machine. Where my parents had connections to launch any career I wanted, she was fighting tooth and nail for every opportunity. 2 weeks later, I found myself in her tiny apartment in Brooklyn, watching her work. The space was minuscule, barely 400 square feet, but every inch was maximized. Fabric swatches covered one wall, organized by color and texture. Her sewing machine, an ancient singer she'd restored herself, sat on a desk made from salvaged wood. The air smelled of coffee and fabric dye as she hunched over a piece, her forehead wrinkled in concentration. When she finished a section and held it up to the light, the transformation was nothing short of magical. "You're going to be famous someday," I told her, meaning every word. She threw a fabric scrap at my head and laughed. "I don't want fame," she said quietly. "I want to change how people think about clothes. Fast fashion is killing our planet, Gabriel. Every piece I make is a tiny rebellion against that." I'd never wanted someone to succeed more than I wanted Eliza to prove the world wrong. I started spending less time at my family's social events and more time helping her hunt for materials at estate sales and thrift stores. My parents noticed my absence, of course. The questions started. Who was this girl? What was her background? Where did she summer? The answers, fashion student, daughter of immigrants, nowhere, did not impress them. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care what they thought. I was falling in love with Eliza's vision, her determination, and her heart. The annual Harrington Christmas dinner was a spectacle of wealth and pretension. Crystal chandeliers dripping with light, staff in white gloves, and enough silverware to confuse anyone who hadn't been trained which fork to use since childhood. I'd warned Eliza what to expect, but nothing could truly prepare her for my family. She spent 2 weeks creating a dress specifically for the occasion. A deep emerald masterpiece made from vintage velvet curtains she'd found at an estate sale. With intricate beadwork she'd stayed up 3 nights to complete. "You look stunning," I whispered as we walked up the marble steps to my parents' Manhattan penthouse. She squeezed my hand so tightly I could feel her pulse racing. The first hour was tense, but manageable. My father barely acknowledged her existence, while my mother performed her well-practiced role of polite interest. "So you make clothes?" she asked, her voice dripping with the same condescension she used when talking to the household staff. Eliza explained her sustainable fashion philosophy with such eloquence that even my father glanced up from his phone. Then my sister Vanessa arrived, fashionably late and already 3 glasses of champagne in. Her eyes locked onto Eliza's dress like a predator spotting wounded prey. "My God, is that homemade?" she asked loudly, circling Eliza like she was examining livestock at auction. "Turn around. Let me see the back." Eliza complied with quiet dignity, but I could see the flush creeping up her neck. The room had gone silent. Cocktail conversations paused as the entertainment began. "You must tell me where you got those beads," my mother chimed in, adjusting her Bulgari necklace worth more than Eliza's entire college tuition. "They look just like the ones on the Christmas ornaments my cleaning lady makes to sell at her church bazaar." Laughter rippled through the room. Polite, cultured laughter, the kind that cuts deeper than any knife. "Actually," Eliza began, her voice surprisingly steady, "they're vintage Czech glass beads from the 1920s. I salvaged them from—" "Gabriel, darling," my mother interrupted, turning to me. "When you said you were bringing a designer, I assumed you meant someone established. Like the Westfield girl? Didn't she just launch a line with Neiman Marcus?" I opened my mouth to defend Eliza, but the words caught in my throat. 27 years of conditioning to never contradict my mother in public paralyzed me. I watched in mute horror as Vanessa raised her phone and snapped several photos of Eliza. "The girls are going to die when they see this," she giggled, thumbs flying over her screen. Hashtag Thrift Shop Princess. A waiter announced dinner was served, breaking the moment. As we moved toward the dining room, my father gripped my elbow. "Is this some kind of rebellion phase?" he hissed into my ear. "Because if it is, get it out of your system before you take over the family foundation next year. We have an image to maintain." At dinner, seated between my mother's oldest friend and a distant cousin who managed one of our European properties, Eliza became invisible. Every attempt she made to join the conversation was subtly redirected or talked over. I watched her shrink further into herself with each passing minute, pushing food around her plate as my relatives discussed their recent yacht purchases and ski trips. When dessert was served, my Uncle Martin, already deep into his 4th scotch, decided to address Eliza directly. "So, the little seamstress," he boomed from across the table. "Gabriel tells me you're quite talented. Perhaps you could look at hemming some pants for me? My regular tailor charges an arm and a leg." The table erupted in laughter. Something inside me finally snapped. I slammed my hand down so hard the crystal water glasses jumped. "Her name is Eliza," I said, my voice shaking with rage. And she's not a seamstress or a tailor. She's a designer with more creativity and integrity than anyone at this table. The silence was immediate and suffocating. My mother's face hardened into the expression I knew meant serious consequences later. "Gabriel," she said icily, "perhaps you've had too much wine?" "Perhaps I've had too much of this family's bullshit," I shot back, standing up and throwing my napkin down. "Eliza, we're leaving." As I helped her with her coat by the door, my sister appeared, swaying slightly from the alcohol. "You know he's just slumming it with you, right?" she said to Eliza, with mock sympathy. "The Harringtons always go through a phase of dating someone interesting before settling down with their own kind. It's practically a family tradition." Before I could react, Eliza's palm connected with Vanessa's face with a crack that echoed through the marble foyer. The red imprint of her fingers bloomed instantly on my sister's cheek. "That's vintage Czech crystal beads for you," Eliza said quietly, then walked out the door. In the taxi home, snow falling gently outside the windows, Eliza finally broke down. Her body shook with silent sobs against my shoulder. I had never hated myself more than I did in that moment. For my cowardice at dinner, for subjecting her to my toxic family, for the pain etched across her beautiful face. "I'm so sorry," I whispered into her hair. "I'll never let them hurt you again." She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face, but something fierce burning in her eyes. "They think I'm nothing," she said, her voice stronger than I expected. "They think what I create is garbage because it doesn't have the right label. I'm going to prove them wrong, Gabriel. Every single one of them." I believed her. God help me. In that moment, I knew she would. The morning after the Christmas disaster, I made the biggest decision of my life. While Eliza slept, exhausted from crying, I called my bank and transferred my trust fund, the one my grandfather had set up that my parents couldn't touch, into a new account. $2 million. It was meant for my proper future, a down payment on a Hampton estate, perhaps, or seed money for joining one of my father's ventures. Instead, it would fund something that actually mattered. When Eliza woke up, I placed a business plan on her lap, along with the bank statement. "I want to invest in you," I said simply, "not as charity, as a business partner who believes in your vision." Her eyes widened as she flipped through the pages, then narrowed with suspicion. "Is this because you feel guilty about last night?" she asked, her voice still raw from crying. "This is because I believe in you more than I've ever believed in anything," I replied, "and because I love you." It was the first time I'd said those words to her. She stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for any trace of doubt or pity. Finding none, she pulled me into a kiss that felt like a promise. We named the brand Salvaged, a nod to both her design philosophy and what our relationship had become after the wreckage of that Christmas dinner. We rented a small studio in Brooklyn, buying industrial sewing machines and hiring 2 recent FIT graduates who shared her passion. I handled the business side while Eliza created. For the first 6 months, we barely broke even. My family cut me off completely. No invitations, no calls, my trust fund the only money I had left. The physical toll was immense. I found Eliza passed out at her workstation more times than I could count, pencil still in hand, sketches scattered around her. One night, frustrated by a design that wouldn't come together, she hurled a mannequin across the studio with such force that it shattered a window. The crash brought our neighbors running, only to find us sitting in a pile of glass, laughing hysterically from exhaustion. "We're going to fail," she sobbed one night, after a major retailer canceled a meeting at the last minute. I held her trembling body against mine, feeling her shoulder blades sharp as wings through her thin t-shirt. She'd lost weight we couldn't afford to lose. "We're not," I insisted, though doubt gnawed at me too. Our savings were dwindling. That night, I made calls to former classmates, swallowing my pride, asking for introductions, opportunities, anything. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Actress Zara Chen, known for her environmental activism, stumbled across our Instagram while researching sustainable brands. She messaged us directly, requesting a custom piece for the Met Gala, just 6 weeks away. The studio became a war zone of creativity. Eliza worked 20-hour days, her fingers bleeding from needle pricks, eyes red-rimmed from strain. 3 days before the deadline, the main fabric, a specially treated recycled silk, arrived damaged. Eliza's scream of frustration was so primal it sent our studio cat hiding under furniture. "It's over," she said, slumping to the floor. "We can't replace this in time." I watched her breaking before my eyes, all that fire and determination guttering out. Without thinking, I grabbed her shoulders and shook her hard enough that her head snapped back. "Look at me," I demanded, my voice unfamiliar even to myself. "You are Eliza fucking Martinez. You made a prom dress out of potato sacks when your family couldn't afford fabric. You are not giving up." Something flashed in her eyes. Anger first, then determination. She shoved me away with surprising strength. "Get me every scrap of material we've rejected in the past month," she ordered. "Now." For the next 48 hours, neither of us slept. Eliza created a phoenix from the ashes, a dress made entirely from material others had discarded, transformed through her vision into something transcendent. When Zara Chen walked the red carpet in Eliza's creation, time seemed to stop. Photos went viral within minutes. By morning, our website had crashed from traffic, and Vogue was on the phone. The momentum was staggering. Suddenly, salvaged wasn't just a brand. It was a movement. Celebrities clamored for Eliza's designs. Environmental groups championed her approach. Fashion critics who dismissed sustainable fashion as a passing trend wrote glowing reviews. Within a year, we had opened a flagship store in Soho, and Eliza had been named to Forbes 30 Under 30. The real vindication came when she was invited to give the keynote address at the Sustainable Fashion Summit, an event my mother had chaired for years as a vanity project, without any genuine interest in sustainability. Watching Eliza take the stage in a suit made from reclaimed parachute silk, speaking with quiet authority to an audience that included the biggest names in fashion, I felt a pride so intense it was almost painful. That night, as we celebrated in our new loft, paid for entirely with profits from the business, Eliza's phone rang. It was my sister Vanessa. I watched Eliza's face as she listened, then silently handed me the phone. "Gabriel," Vanessa's voice was honeyed with false warmth. "It's been too long. Mother and I were just saying how proud we are of what you and Eliza have accomplished." I looked at Eliza, who nodded slightly, a small smile playing at her lips. "Were you?" I replied coolly. "That's interesting, since the last thing Mother said to me was that I was dead to her." "Water under the bridge," Vanessa trilled. "Family is family. In fact, we'd love to have you both over for dinner next week, and perhaps Eliza could bring some pieces for us to look at. Mother's charity auction is coming up, and having salvaged items would be such a coup." I met Eliza's eyes across the room. In that moment, something passed between us, the understanding that we had arrived at the moment we'd been unconsciously working toward, the moment of reckoning. "Actually, Vanessa," I said, my voice eerily calm, "we're booked solid for the next year. No exceptions, even for family." The silence on the other end was delicious. I could almost see my sister's perfectly Botoxed face contorting with rage. "Don't be ridiculous, Gabriel," she finally managed. "We're talking about a major social event. Do you know how many connections Eliza could make? How generous we're being after how she behaved at Christmas?" Eliza walked over and pressed the speakerphone button, her eyes never leaving mine. Hello, Vanessa, she said sweetly. I can hear you perfectly well, and I want to personally thank you for those photos you took of me at Christmas dinner. The ones you posted to mock my homemade dress? They ended up in the hands of a Vogue editor who recognized my beadwork technique. Funny how things work out, isn't it? I could hear Vanessa's breathing quicken on the other end of the line. Now, Eliza continued, about those pieces for your mother's auction. Our waiting list for custom work is currently 18 months long, but we'd be happy to add you to it. The deposit is non-refundable, of course. $50,000 per piece. 50,000? Vanessa sputtered. That's absurd. For recycled garbage? Actually, I cut in, our last auction piece went for 120,000. The buyer called it an investment. I paused for effect. It was that Westfield girl Mother's so fond of. You know, the one with the Neiman Marcus line? 3 days later, my mother appeared at our Soho store unannounced. I watched from the office above as she swept in, dripping in her usual diamonds, expecting immediate attention. Our staff, trained to treat everyone equally, asked her to join the queue of customers waiting for personal shopping appointments. "Do you know who I am?" she demanded loudly. "I'm Catherine Harrington, Gabriel's mother." The sales associate, unfazed, consulted her tablet. "I don't see an appointment for a Catherine Harrington. The next available slot is in 3 weeks. Would you like to book it?" I descended the stairs slowly, feeling strangely calm. My mother's face when she spotted me was a complex mixture of anger, pride, and calculation. "Gabriel," she said, arms outstretched, as if the past 2 years of silence had never happened. "Darling, this place is magnificent. Your father and I are so proud." "Are you?" I asked, keeping my distance from her embrace. "That's not what the cease and desist letter from Dad's lawyer suggested when we used my family name in a press release." Her smile faltered only slightly. "A misunderstanding. You know how protective your father is of the family brand." She lowered her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Speaking of which, the foundation gala is next month. Your father and I would love for you and Eliza to attend as our guests. Front table. The governor will be there, and that sustainable fashion initiative he's sponsoring." The door chimed as Eliza entered, carrying coffee for both of us. She froze momentarily at the sight of my mother, then straightened her shoulders and walked directly to us. "Mrs. Harrington," she said, handing me my coffee. "What a surprise." My mother turned on her 1,000-watt society smile. "Eliza, darling, I was just telling Gabriel about the foundation gala. We'd love for you both to attend. Your work has become so noteworthy." Eliza's expression remained perfectly neutral. "That's very kind. Unfortunately, we're hosting our own event that evening. We're launching a scholarship program for underprivileged design students." The flash of irritation in my mother's eyes was quickly masked. "Perhaps another time, then." "Perhaps," Eliza agreed, "though our pieces will be there. The governor's wife commissioned 12 of them last month for the exact initiative you mentioned. She's been a wonderful supporter from the beginning." The color drained from my mother's face. The governor's wife had been her social rival for decades. "I see," she said tightly. Then, with forced brightness, "Well, I'm actually here to shop. There's a jacket in the window that would be perfect for the Aspen trip next month." Eliza smiled, the smile of someone who knew they held all the cards. "The emerald one? It's lovely, isn't it? That's actually part of our museum collection now. The Metropolitan acquired it last week for their sustainable fashion exhibit." "Everything in this store is for sale," my mother insisted, her voice rising slightly. "I want to speak to a manager." "You are," I said quietly. "Eliza is the creative director, and I'm the CEO. And not everything has a price tag, Mother. Some things, like respect and family loyalty, are earned, not purchased." For a moment, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she gathered herself, clutching her Hermes bag like a shield. "I hope you know what you're doing, Gabriel," she said coldly. "This little rebellion won't last forever. When you're ready to rejoin the real world, your place in the family business will be waiting." As she turned to leave, Eliza called after her. "Mrs. Harrington, that dress you're wearing. Chanel, pre-fall collection, isn't it? They copied our silhouette." She paused deliberately. "We're flattered, of course. Imitation and all that." The door closed behind my mother with a definitive click. Later that night, as we lay in bed in our loft overlooking the city, Eliza traced patterns on my chest with her fingertip. "Was it worth it?" she asked softly. "Giving up your family for all this?" I caught her hand and pressed it to my lips. "I didn't give up my family for this," I told her. "I found my real family in you." Outside our window, snow began to fall, just like it had on that Christmas night 2 years ago, when we'd left my parents' house in disgrace. But this time, there were no tears, no uncertainty, no fear. "You know," Eliza murmured, "revenge wasn't actually the point. It never was." "I know," I replied, pulling her closer. "The point was creating something authentic in a world full of fakes. The revenge was just a satisfying bonus." She laughed against my shoulder, the sound vibrant and free. In that moment, I realized the most powerful lesson of our journey. True success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, you get to do both at the same time.